We have about 1 more minute here before we'll get started. All right, it is 12 o'clock on the dot, and in appreciation of your time, we're going to go ahead and get started today. I did shoot a note out to everybody that this webinar is set up to use your computer audio. Hopefully you can hear me. I am looking at the chat and I don't see any concerns as of yet. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for attending our discussion today on how we can work together to help control infection in the workplace. It's a concerning time for all of our communities, and Dayspring is committed to helping educate and provide resources as available. My name is Lindsay Fisher. I'm the Business Development Manager for Western Montana. On the line, we also have Andy Gordon, who is our Business Development Manager for Central Montana, and Tony Vaughn, who's our Business Development Manager for Eastern Montana. Many of you know Dayspring Restoration as 911 for your home or business when disaster strikes. In addition to providing mitigation and restoration services, we also provide high-level cleaning and disinfecting services for strategic business partners. Our goal today is to help you understand the issues we're facing with coronavirus, how it's aggravated in community spaces, like the facilities you work in and oversee, and the steps that you can take to properly disinfect your buildings and your workspaces. We share more common surfaces than ever before in history. Sharing common surfaces is the root of the problem with coronavirus and other infections, as it creates a pathway for viruses to easily spread. Most people are working outside the home and come into contact with a variety of businesses throughout their day. Think about your typical day. You might start at the gym, cash a check at your bank on your way to work, arrive at the office, pick up a prescription before grabbing lunch at your favorite takeout joint, stop for gas on your way to the PTA meeting, and finally arrive home. You've touched 7 businesses and who knows how many surfaces. Within our work buildings, we have an abundance of opportunity to spread germs via the many surfaces we touch. Door handles, light switches, water coolers, just to name a few. If infected when we touch a surface, we're leaving behind our germs for the next person. I think one of the most common misconceptions is that viruses and bacteria can't survive long outside of the human body, or that viruses can be easy to kill if mitigated properly. This illustration shows the lifespan of coronavirus in comparison to some other common viruses. These are general ranges, and we're learning more about the coronavirus every single day. Most recently, we saw from the cruise ship study that coronavirus was shown to have lived for up to 17 days after the passengers left the ship. The safest thing we can do is to assume that all surfaces are contaminated. By routinely cleaning and disinfecting correctly, you have the best chance of reducing the spread of infection. The biggest challenge of proper disinfection is first removing biofilm and eliminating the environment for bacteria to grow. Contaminants such as dirt, sweat, and oil build up to create a thin microbiological coating, which is called biofilm. For example, on your way home from work, you stop to get gas. As you insert your credit card into the chip reader, you notice the buttons are brown and disgusting. That's biofilm. Although it's an extreme example, biofilm can and does exist on most surfaces and can be hard to see with the human eye. Over time, biofilm creates an environment for viruses to thrive. As I mentioned, coronavirus can live on a surface for up to 14 or 17 days, and biofilm is a primary means of allowing it to do so. Please note that traditional disinfecting techniques will not work unless proper cleaning is executed first, and that layer of biofilm is removed from contaminated surfaces. I'm just pausing here for a moment. It looks like we may have lost audio for a couple folks. I'm just going to send a message in the chat. You know what these common high-touch surfaces are just as well as I do. As I mentioned before, it's safe to assume that all surfaces are contaminated. Don't forget some of the more non-intuitive carriers of germs, such as your shoes. Always best practice to take your shoes off before you enter your home. So how do we minimize the spread of virus? Effective hand washing can do wonders. We've seen this illustration over and over the past few weeks, and you probably even have your own song to sing while you're getting the job done. What's most important is using the proper mechanics to loosen and remove the bacteria. We've talked about a variety of topics, including scientific knowledge about viruses, biofilm buildup, and how infections spread easily from one person to another. One thing we haven't touched on is not relying on hand sanitizer. It's always best to wash your hands with soap and water unless you have no other option. If I lost you now is the time to check back in. You're probably wondering, how do I disinfect my workspace? We want to talk to you today about some things that you or your staff can do and should be doing to effectively disinfect your own spaces. Let's start with the proper disinfecting process. The first step in the disinfecting process is to use an effective product and process to remove the buildup of gross contamination. We call this step gross cleaning. During the first step, a rigorous and detailed cleaning should be performed to remove as much dirt, dust, and biofilm from the surface as possible. Once the gross clean has been performed, the next step is to dry the recently cleaned surface. A common mistake we see is that people try to apply a disinfectant over a recently cleaned surface that's still wet. Doing this can have a dramatic effect on the disinfectant's ability to kill a virus. Once all surfaces are dry, the third step of the process is to apply an EPA-registered disinfectant by thoroughly wetting the surface by spraying or wet wiping. And fourth, you must allow the disinfectant to dwell on the surface. The dwell time is the time it takes for the disinfectant to kill the intended bacteria or virus. And last, once disinfected, it's good practice to wipe the surface clean once again with water and let it dry. One of the primary issues we see between effective and ineffective disinfection is related to how the product is being used in a given situation. We understand all spaces are different and disinfecting needs of every space are different. But these questions should be considered every time disinfecting services are being conducted. This slide poses some really great questions that you should ask your staff or your cleaning vendor about. A great place to start for answering some of the questions on the previous slide is your disinfectant's label. Your cleaning product label needs to show that the product is EPA registered. As part of the EPA registration process, they evaluate product efficacy to make sure the public health label claims are accurate. The picture you see on this slide is the EPA certification for Clorox bleach. We strongly recommend that any disinfecting products not having an EPA registration not be used. Use only products that have been rigorously tested and approved by the EPA. Here's a full label from a bottle of Ultra Clorox bleach. The orange arrow up top shows us that the product is EPA registered. The next section in yellow illustrates what viruses this product is effective against, which does include coronavirus. This is so important. You must make sure that any disinfectant you're using in your facility is designed and registered to kill its intended target. With our given environment, you want to make sure your product is registered to kill coronavirus. Circled in red, it's also very important to note the directions for use. In the case of this Clorox bleach, it must remain wet on the surface for 5 minutes, then you rinse, clean, and dry. When's the last time you sprayed enough to let the surface sit wet for 5 minutes? User error is one of the biggest challenges to proper disinfection. We find that most disinfectant dwell times can be even longer than 5 minutes. Make sure you take the time to understand how your disinfectant needs to be used in order to achieve its intended result. Common mistakes we see when disinfecting include not using proper measurements, not leaving the wet solution on the surface for the correct amount of time. Again, this is called the dwell time, which is found on the product's label. Using expired products. Once disinfecting products are past their use-by date, you can no longer guarantee that they will work as described. Diluting by adding more water rather than starting over with a fresh batch. And mixing different chemicals. What does this mean to me and my business in real life today? Stop and take a look at the surface you're working from right now. What do you see? You might see a mouse, a coffee cup, a calculator, some pens, and a stack of folders and papers. If the dwell time on bleach is 5 minutes, how are you going to disinfect that stack of paper, the string on your glasses, or your fabric mouse pad? If your property does not have a confirmed case of COVID-19 exposure and lacks resources available to properly disinfect, we may be able to assist with cleaning procedures. Some of the services we can assist with include janitorial type cleaning to remove biofilm. We do that with a dry and a wet cleaning. An application of an EPA registered disinfectant following label instructions and using proper dwell time and drying processes. Again, this process can be done by you or your staff. However, if you do not have enough resources, please let us know. If you have a confirmed or suspected case in your home or business building, we can provide a highly trained, specialized team to perform disinfection services. Our teams have extensive experience working in contaminated environments and are fit, tested, and certified to wear proper protective equipment and respiratory protection. There is a quicker mechanism for disinfecting all types of surfaces, which offers little room for user error like we see with chemical solutions. SteraMist is a newer technology to the commercial cleaning market, which provides effective, rapid, and widespread disinfecting capabilities for various environments. SteraMist was developed by DARPA for the Department of Defense. Initially, it was developed as a tool to combat biological warfare attacks. About 5 years ago, the product was released to the commercial market for use in disinfecting buildings and workspaces. Dayspring Restoration purchased this technology and rights to the product in the state of Montana. We have certified and trained disinfection technicians in 6 major locations across Montana with the flexibility and capacity to reach areas in between. How does SteraMist work? In the most simple terms, a hydrogen peroxide solution is sprayed through the SteraMist unit. As the hydrogen peroxide leaves the applicator, it goes through a cold plasma arc. This turns the hydrogen peroxide into activated ionized hydrogen peroxide fog or mist that lands on all surfaces. Once the activated ionized hydrogen peroxide mist meets bacterial or viral cells, a chemical reaction occurs. The chemical immediately breaks the envelope of the virus and kills it. At the completion of the chemical reaction, we're simply left with water. With most disinfectants taking minutes to kill, SteraMist can kill a virus or bacteria within 3 seconds or less of the product making contact. SteraMist is safe and it won't erode surfaces such as wood and plastics like Hirsch Chemicals can. It also works on the surface of fabric or textiles without causing discoloration or degradation. Because the machine produces a mist, we can cover large areas effectively and quickly. SteraMist is EPA registered and has a 6-log kill. That means it's 99.9999% effective with little room for user error, making it a leading solution during pandemics such as coronavirus. Like many of you, we are also feeling constraints of supply chain issues and what products we can receive at this time. When we have a known case of infection, SteraMist is definitely the tool for the job. For everyday projects, traditional cleaning and disinfecting services are adequate. We do have some attendees specific to the healthcare field, and my colleague Andy is going to touch on some important healthcare specific information. Andy?
Great, thanks Lindsay, and thank you all as well for joining us today. How's my audio? I know we were having some issues. Lindsay, is it coming in clear on your end?
Clear on my end.
Excellent, okay. This is recorded, folks. Just a couple quick notes. This is being recorded. We hope to make it available in the future. We will have another presentation of this in a couple days from now, and the situation is fluid, so we're updating as needed and as we have more to report. So always good information. Just want to put that out there as a public service announcement. As to the folks that are joining us today from the healthcare industry, I want to give you guys a little bit of a rundown, more specifically of how we've pivoted the business, the personnel that we have, and where we stand to support critical frontline operators. One thing, we just covered SteraMist. SteraMist is an excellent tool in our arsenal. As Lindsay mentioned, we do have some constraints, some limiting factors, supply chain wise, as everybody does right now, on the solution, the bit solution that's needed for those units, but we're expanding that capacity. We've got additional supplies on order. But for right now, that's why we're limiting those to known exposures or suspected exposures. In addition to that, we have also secured a very healthy supply of Barrier 2 disinfectant here. We are using this in conjunction with our known exposure cases in a very specific protocol as a wide area disinfection protocol. But in the absence of SteraMist for everybody, we're happy to be able to offer this. Barrier 2 is on the list 9 EPA approved coronavirus disinfectants list that I believe we have a link to at the end of the slides here. But nonetheless, if you guys haven't checked that out, there's hundreds of approved disinfectants on that list. If you're curious about it, Barrier 2 is one of those tools that we can use, and it is capable of providing a much like SteraMist, an enveloping fog, if you will. Okay, we can hit a wide area with this with the fogging system. We also have direct electronic spray applicators, sort of similar, not quite as fancy as our SteraMist units, but nonetheless, that we're able to get the job done on any non-porous surface, wood, metal, plastic, you name it. So that's part of it. To give you guys an idea of the protocol that we're using for our known infections, we are going to start with our gross clean with Envirox. Many of you that are in the industry probably know this, either hospitals or medical facilities or commercial kitchens, for example. This would be very familiar to you. So Envirox for the gross clean, followed by the Barrier 2 with our electronic hand application sprayers. Barrier 2 has a 2-minute visible dwell time. This means it is sort of seeing it wet on the surface. We do also recommend a 10-minute holding period for complete evaporation, minimization of any sort of respiratory distress, anything like that. But nonetheless, considering wide area used for disinfectant, that's a pretty fast turnover and turnaround that we can provide to folks as far as support goes. So we'll go Barrier 2, electric sprayer application, then we'll go back through and we'll SteraMist the exposure areas specific to, for example, we just did a 100,000 square foot facility, commercial facility over the weekend. with a couple known cases, and we would then go and stereomist. In this case, it was an office building, so the cubicles and the most used bathrooms, and those sort of areas where we knew that a particular positive case had interacted with on a regular basis. And then after we do that, then we come back in with a cold fog of barrier 2 again. So it's sort of a triple punch, a triple whammy, if you will. This is our protocol for supporting you all in dealing with known exposures, whether it be commercial facilities as office spaces, whether it be anything else though, certainly healthcare facilities, frontline operators taking priority as we can do that. And I will tell you all right now, the majority of our workforce at Dayspring, given our background and given our expertise, has been pivoted over to support response efforts to the crisis. I don't have control of the screen. Lindsay, can you advance?
Yep.
Thank you. The other piece that is certainly specific to healthcare that I'd like to touch on is our capacity to support negative air construction. This is to augment existing facilities, similar to the news reports that you see coming out of New York, other metro areas, expanding capacity, spillover of patients. How do we do that? How do you contain the virus and still take care of those that are exposed, or excuse me, those known cases and those that have not yet been exposed but may be showing up because they're suspected or otherwise? We, as part of our day-to-day operations as a restoration company, we just happen to be very, very well positioned to create negative air construction. We do it all the time for mold remediation or other biohazard operations, asbestos, those kind of things. And so we're very familiar with this. We have the trained personnel, expert personnel to help come in and rapidly retrofit facilities, help existing facilities construct additional spaces, negative air spaces. But negative air pressure, keeping all the bad bugs in, not good bugs, bad bugs in. What you see here, example of our units that we put on the site, or that we put on site. These are our air movers, our air scrubbers. All you basically need to retrofit a space is essentially a venting mechanism that we can push to the outside. You'll see in those photos what some of our colleagues have done. I believe these are from the Seattle area, out in their neck of the woods, but we've also had success. We found success. If you can't, just pop a hole in a window or cut a hole in a window, or you don't have existing vents as you see on the lower right, what we found is success with just removing windows wholesale and then putting up, boarding them up and then cutting appropriate venting holes for that. So not to get too in the weeds on it, but we have that capacity. We've got the equipment for it. We've got the trained personnel to rapidly construct those as needed. Those are the 2 points that I wanted to touch on for healthcare specific folks that are joining us today. Those of you that joined us from the MHA blast, thank you very much. Again, I want to just stress before I sign off and hand it back to Lindsay here, we are operating as everybody is on a very specific sort of priority level. Where can we provide the best and highest use for our equipment and personnel and time for critical needs? And then beyond that, we're allocating resources on a first come, first served basis. So as you might imagine, we are experiencing the beginning of an uptick in a lot of inbound requests for support. And so those of you that are interested, I would recommend reaching out sooner rather than later. With that, I will hand it back to Lindsay here, and we can wrap up and take any questions that you all may have.
Great, thank you, Andy. We believe you're already doing your part by attending this webinar and educating yourselves on how you can better clean and disinfect your workspaces. We've talked about the number of high-touch surfaces we encounter in a day, how illness is transmitted and what we can do to avoid transmission, surface cleaning, choosing the right disinfectant and using it properly, and the solutions available by Dayspring Restoration. We have for you a resources tab that includes 3 you may not already be familiar with. The first one there is just our website, and we did put out a blog post that just talks about our response and our disinfection protocol during this time, which Andy just touched on. CDC you're familiar with. The third one down is the Building Service Contractor Association. There's a lot of information on this website relevant to contractors and building managers. We've got the state of Montana, and then finally the restoration industry. This is really where we're getting our guidance and our direction. Our CEO is president of the Restoration Industry Association Board, and all of us work together just to make sure that our protocols are up to speed and we are taking the best care of our important clients that we can. If you're interested in having a deeper conversation with any one of us, please do reach out. We're looking for long-term business partners or anyone who has a need at this time for supplemental cleaning service. We know how important and urgent this is becoming, and we want to do our part to help as many folks as we can. We appreciate the opportunity to share time with you today, and we look forward to visiting with each of you further. If you shoot any one of us an email, we will be happy to get these slides over to you so that you have them. And at this time, we are going to open the floor for any questions you might have. If you're not comfortable speaking in the group setting, by all means, please reach out to us as individuals. Thank you again for your time today. And who has a question?
This is Andy again, folks. You can also go ahead and drop a question if you'd like. Feel free to in the chat box. We'd be happy to answer them there too. And then while you guys think about doing that, I'd like to point out, actually my email is wrong on here. It's not Andy G, it's Andrew G. So ANDREWG at dayspringrestoration.com. Sorry about that mix up there.
Yeah. We were just talking about the software. Can we have
All right.
I think somebody has a question, but we are getting a lot of background noise. If perhaps you could mute your line if you're not asking the question.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out, this is Andy.
Yeah, they want you to watch it. I think they say daily, but I guess depending on how much you wear it. So however many you take out.
Dayspring. Anyway, just a quick note, those of you that didn't see it in the chat, Ashley Fasaro with MHA Ventures did drop a line. MHA can also be contacted to get these slides and for additional information. And then get in touch with us as well. So Montana Hospital Association, also an excellent resource.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and close our meeting. Thank you again for your time, and we look forward to visiting with each of you individually to answer any questions you have. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks, folks. Be safe.